Well, in Oklahoma, you're either watering because of the heat or you're watering because of the wind and things drying out. And it has been pretty windy lately. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but enough so that amazingly the container gardens really dry out much more quickly than I would like. So, what are we going to talk about on today's Wednesday walkabout after taking a little break yesterday and going to the zoo? We are going to talk about, Linda, what comes next? Because that's the question I get over and over again. What is going to fill in where all of the tulips were? And that's what we're going to discuss today. Okay, before we get started, let's talk a little bit about our Easter plans, starting out with my question of the day. What are your plans for this Easter? For me, I'm doing things a little bit different. In the past, I have pretty much always had a bunch of my friends over for Easter, just like for Thanksgiving. But this year, since we had the garden tour, since Easter is very late, because taxes were just recently due, we're kind of messing it up a little bit. And for once, we are going to go to somebody else's house for Easter that lives in the neighborhood, good friends of ours. We can just walk over there. My other rationale for that is because it's supposed to be really yucky on Easter. It's supposed to be storming, raining, windy, cool, and I always think of Easter as kind of an outside exercise and an outside celebration, not so much inside. So this year we're going to do things differently, but I am still going to decorate my house for Easter, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. One thing I want to talk about right now is to revisit this container planting I did a while ago, because I think it's going to be very, very sweet at Easter time. I'm doing a little bit of grooming on it. I'm deadheading any of the violas in here, but as you recall, a while back, I planted these with just violas, and then I sprinkled some black-seeded Simpson lettuce in there. And looky here, it has germinated, and it's doing what I want it to do, which is to create kind of a little frilly skirt around the edge. As it gets bigger, it will get frillier, and I'll be able to enjoy these pots probably for another couple of weeks before I tear out the pansies, and I have to put something in here that's a little bit more heat tolerant. And you can see the same thing over here. I didn't plant any bacopa in this one, but I've got a little bit more lettuce. It's limp because I just watered it, but nevertheless, I think it'll be very pretty and perky by Easter time. Okay, so before we get started looking at everything and what comes next, let's do a little bit of design by Tussie Mussy. Let's have a design moment in the garden, because what comes next is largely based on what color theme that I want to have in my garden as everything unfolds. I've shared this with you before, but I think it's kind of fun to see how it all comes together, because most of these plants that I'm going to show you, not all of them, but most of them are going to be the next iteration of what comes after the tulips. You can see that the tulips are pretty much spent. They're getting tired. By the end of the day, after this wind, they will really be tired, and by this weekend, they will be done. So I'm pulling them all out, and if the bulb comes out, then I'm saving it in one basket over here. But if it breaks off the bulb as I pull it out, then I'm just putting them in here, and I will take these probably to my works shredder. Later on, I will shred them down and I'll put them in my composter. So that's what's going on with those guys. Let's take a break here, and when we come back, I want to show you how Design by Tussie Mussy works. And you may recall that before the pinks came out, everything here, the pinks and the tulips, everything in the cottage garden was pretty much in blue and white. Stuart, if we can, let's put a picture of that up here. But one of the reasons it was in blue and white, or purple and white, I'll kind of use those colors interchangeably, was because that was the color that I wanted to have in my pansies and violas. And it was beautiful, I think, especially with the whites when they came out. Now, what it was also beautiful with was the East Friesland salvia. And you guys have asked me a million times which salvia I grow. And this is East Friesland, But if you can't find it, then by all means try another variety, because in my experience, they have all done very, very well. So right there is a beautiful color echo in the salvia and in the pansy. And then of course, it's so beautiful. Oh, thank you. I had, people are so lovely, aren't they? I had some deeper purple violas that also kind of completed that little triumvirate there. Now, what is coming is going to be in another part of the garden. So, Stuart, you're going to have to back up.
Yeah, I can do it.
By the way, here's another variety of salvia that's getting ready to bloom right here. You'll notice it blooms a little bit shorter, and this has a little bit more of a pink hue. This just self-seeded in place. When it goes to seed, it goes to seed, and typically beautifully. Okay, now just coming out are these sweet scabiosa flowers. I think these are just so dear, and they come in and they start bringing in the violets. Now look at how many buds are on just this one plant, and multiply that plant by dozens, and you'll see that I will have all sorts of scabiosa coming into bloom. So it will contribute to my Tussie Mussy by design. So there's another element in lavender. Something else that's coming out that I probably won't pick right now because it's not ready, and that is these alliums. These alliums are a different variety than I have grown in the past. You can see, there's a number of them, and they kind of line up along this walkway here in the front of the cottage. And I'm not sure how big these are going to be, and so I don't want to cut that prematurely. But you can see how it adds another kind of purpley lavender dimension to that in gradations of tone that I think is really spectacular. Now over here, when I said that pretty much any kind of salvia will work, this is another variety that I've got here, and I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure what this is. But you can see that it is a bigger, bolder, kind of huskier flower than the East Friesland. This might be Midnight, I'm not sure, but look how beautiful it is. And I've got that kind of going in a stream throughout the garden. Now, what is really going to impact the color of the entire tableau here in short order, and that's all of this larkspur that I scattered around the garden. And it's everywhere. Look at how tall it is. Look at those big fat buds. And when we come back, I've got one in bloom, and I will show you how it will contribute to the overall color palette and the overall design. Boy, Stuart, this wind is really picked up. When I came out this morning, it was very, very calm, and now it's very, very windy. I need to take down my umbrella. So you can see over here, I've got more of this glorious scabiosa. It is just beautiful, and it makes such sweet, tiny little bouquets. But look over here. This is my first, I almost hate to cut it, but just for you, I'm going to. Look at this beautiful larkspur. Now, the larkspur is very delicate. What it contributes to the garden is not only this gorgeous, gorgeous color. Look at that. Let's put it right here on top of this lemon lime nandina. What a beautiful color palette that is. So you can see that not only does it contribute its color, but it also contributes a completely different kind of textural element. Finely cut, almost ferny. So we'll add that to our bouquet, and you can see that it's all beginning to fill out. Then something else that wasn't in bloom before, it was in very tight, sweet little mounds, but is coming into bloom now, and that is this lavender catmint. Now see how it adds kind of a different color. not only in another shade, another gradation of that lavender color, but also another shade of foliage, because this is more of a blue-green. In addition, this foliage, like the salvia, is matte. It doesn't really do a lot of light reflection like the shiny foliage of the larkspur there, but we're creating a very, very pretty little design by Tussie Mussy, I think. So when we come back, I'll show you another element. Okay, now this Salvia gregii in this purple hue, kind of a deep lilac, it's not going to join the party until a little bit later. This that I've got in the window box is already in bloom, but I also have some of it in the flower beds, but it won't bloom till a little bit later in the season. And when it does bloom, it will also bloom with the butterfly candy in lavender, little lavender, and that will also complement this color palette that I've got going. Now over here, in a very, very subtle way, even the blueberries contribute to what we've got going on here. I think I told you that I wanted to cut some for a bouquet, and look how sweet that looks. You can see a hint of lavender as the flowers begin to turn into blueberries. And even that is an important part of the composition in my hand, but more importantly, a part of the composition overall. So let's take a moment, give you guys a breather, go to the bathroom, go get a second cup of coffee, and we'll just put some really, really pretty imagery, some pretty footage of what the garden looks like now, and then we're gonna add another color to this combo when we come back. Okay, the next color that's going to join the party, it is white. I already have some white in the garden in the form of bacopa and some of the blooming encore azaleas. I've got a lot of it in my container plantings, but now it's starting to appear in the garden itself. And the first thing to appear will be, I will mark this down in my journal, it's going to be an It's a Breeze rose. These It's a Breeze roses have done so well that I'm probably, after the first flush on the one on the west side, I'm probably going to have to cut it back. The It's a Breeze rose in ivory is available right now. I have been told, unless in the weeks since I spoke to Karina, it has been bought out. But we nevertheless have it available right now. So imagine what this will look like when this whole bush on this side and also over there on the other side is just resplendent with these white flowers. And I love the very, very simple form of this flower, and I also love the little yellow interior. So let's get a close-up of that.
Okay, cool.
Yep. And that kind of repeats the very lemony color that I have in other areas of the garden. And speaking of lemony, this is another crucial component in my color palette that is holding the whole thing together and making it seem cohesive and not a little bit just chaotic. Okay, the Abelia, Miss Lemon Abelia. Abelia are, I think, one of the most underused categories of shrubs, both blooming and for their foliage, of any shrubs out there. So if you're not growing them, I would really encourage you to do so. This is all Miss Lemon that runs up and down Lemon Lane, but look how beautifully it complements my color palette. That blue, purple, and lemon.
Yep.
And the light is kind of harsh this morning, but I hope you can still kind of see what it looks like. And this color, this lemony yellow color, I've talked about this so many times before, but it is repeated throughout the front landscape. It's repeated not only in the abelia, but it's also repeated in the foliage of things like these mounds right here of golden feverfew. It's obviously repeated in the lemon lime nandina, but also on the east side in the sunshine ligustrum, in the touch of gold hollies, and really any plant that when it puts out new growth, its first flush of growth is kind of a yellowy green, that classic spring green. And that's another thing that kind of makes the whole composition come together and really sing.
Now, another flower that's going to be blooming in lavender with a spiky type floral head, just like the salvia, is this veronica. Now, the veronica blooms a little bit later. And the difference between the salvia and the veronica is really in the way the leaves capture the light. So this has more glossy foliage, and the flower head is going to be paler. It's going to be a little bit more delicate, but it's really going to be beautiful. So when designing your garden and designing your Tussie Mussy, don't think just about the colors alone and whether or not they really complement one another, but think about the foliage too. Make a good combination of matte foliage and shiny foliage, and their, let's just say their light reflective quality in contrast to one another. So here, this veronica is placed next to the salvia, but it's got a different ability to capture the light and glisten. I love using both with clipped boxwood because, boy, if there's any plant that glistens, it is a boxwood ball in the spring.
Okay, if there's any flower that I'm really excited to add to this lavender combo, it's this right here. And I'm so excited because I just seeded this, a package of seeds. It was one of those gardening risks worth taking. I believe I seeded them in the fall. And I'll be darned if they didn't germinate. And look at the beautiful flower head color.
So.
It also is in that kind of lavender color with a whole different type of leaf. I've got this, and it's scattered.
What is it?
Throughout. It's a penstemon,
okay, cool.
But it's in a completely different color palette than the other penstemons that I have, and I think it's really, really beautiful. And here's that wild orchid that you guys helped me identify last year that just kind of showed up, and I didn't know. It must have been a hijacker on another plant that came in, but it's beautiful, and I really hope it spreads over here. So, and look here, this is what I mean. There are a few encore azaleas right now. It got hit by that late freeze, but what remains contributes to that beautiful color combo. Okay, so given that this is the good color start, I'm going to keep this in mind when I go and shop for what few annuals that I will be planting before summer hits. Now, when I plant annuals, I plant enough for the containers, I plant enough for along the edges, but I let the perennials and the blooming shrubs really have their way with the garden because there's more than enough color to carry the cottage garden feel without me adding a lot of other things. I might plant some zinnias, some cleome, things like that I'll start from seed. But basically, any kind of low-growing cushion annuals that I plant, like pentas, like lantana, like angelonia, anything of that nature, I will plant after I pull out the flowers, and they will, of course, be informed by what I've got going on here. Now, here's an example of a little bit of poetic license that I'm taking with the color palette, because this kind of almost goes pink. This is a bacopa, and I happen to know that there are some pentas that are in this same shade, and I really think that's gorgeous. I've got this growing in some of the planters here and in other areas of the garden. So what I'm doing is I'm just building on the kind of color thematic that I've got going. And then when you come up here, as always, it wouldn't be the cottage if I didn't have my hose out. You can see how it plays with all of the whites and things that will be in bloom for a while. So that's another color component when I begin to plant annuals that I will also keep in the mix. I'm going to plant more white annuals, maybe white pentas, white lantana, anything that kind of blooms in white. So let's take a minute, let's deconstruct this. We will give you a guide to all of these plants. And by the way, practically all of these plants enjoy the same kind of conditions, with the exception of the violas and the pansies. They prefer cooler temperatures than these others do. They tend to flourish with a little bit more warmth. Now, why is that important? Well, because if you want them to grow in tandem and you want them to grow kind of together, then you want to make sure that they want roughly the same kinds of conditions. But even if they don't, then just plant them in another area of your garden that might have a microclimate that works better for that specific plant than for the other. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. It looks like
I didn't want to get in your video.
No, that's okay. You delivered me some flowers yesterday,
Yes,
and you've delivered me some more today.
Yes, ma'am. I'll probably deliver you some more
And
tomorrow.
probably some. Well, keep them coming. That's what I
Once
say.
you keep up with this, it looks beautiful.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate
Yes,
it.
ma'am.
You have a great day and happy Easter.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye. Okay, let's take a little lesson in seedling recognition. So this, Stuart thought it was a watermelon. It is probably a pumpkin, given that I've got little pumpkin seeds coming up pretty much everywhere. Over here, this is some kind of tree, and I don't want it in here. This looks to be like it's some kind of salvia, I'm going to bet. And I probably won't let it grow there, but we'll see. I'll let it grow up a little bit just so I can see what it is. This is grass growing in my gravel, so I will pull it out. More grass, but look here. That is a cherished treasure. I'm going to protect that. That is a little tiny boxwood basil. And over here, look at this sweet little guy. That is a little tiny redbud tree.
Jeez.
Really, really cute. And then over here is a big larkspur that's growing up in here. Over here, I've got a little Verbena bonariensis.
I'm blind.
Yeah, you're blind. A little Verbena bonariensis. This, I'm not sure what it is. So this is one of those things that I'm going to let grow up and grow big so I can identify it. Here's another little larkspur. Well, there you go. On your knees gardening today and a little lesson in seedling recognition. So if you've got any additional suggestions of perennials or annuals that I may not have mentioned that you think would be a really crucial addition to this entire scape, I think that would be wonderful. I also know that I've got some agapanthus in those same hues that are getting ready to explode, I hope. Also some plumbago. I love that lavender plumbago. I may need to make that as an addition, especially to the window box this year. So another question of the day is, if you've got any color appropriate recommendations for me, then please let me know. And speaking of, here's a very color appropriate little picture. I've had so many littles visiting me this week. with different Easter pictures and things. Clara brought me these, and we just had a lovely, lovely visit yesterday. We learned all sorts of things about the garden. Next up, coming up in the next couple of days, we might do some extra videos on the power of pinching and cutting back for fuller, bushier growth and more flowers. We're going to show a little bit about what's going to be coming up next in the back, and then also a few Easter projects just to really make the cottage look festive. So you guys have a great day. Happy Wednesday walkabout, and I'll see you next time.